Picture this. A Tuesday morning, fluorescent lights, the smell of burnt breakroom coffee that's been sitting on the warmer since 7 a.m. And me, standing at the HR desk, holding a printed request for something I was 100% entitled to. Within the hour, the CEO of the entire company would be standing exactly where I was standing, and half the department would suddenly develop a fascinating interest in their shoelaces. But let's back up. My name isn't important for this one either. What's important is my job title, Senior Compliance Analyst, and the fact that for 2 years, I'd been quietly building something nobody else in the building wanted to touch, a full audit trail for the company's biggest federal contract. The kind of contract that gets renewed only if a company can prove, in writing, that it follows the rules to the letter. I wasn't flashy about it. I didn't need a neon sign on my office door. I just did the work, cross-referencing invoices, flagging discrepancies, building the paper trail that kept the company's biggest client, a federal agency, from walking away and taking a 9-figure contract with them. Here's the thing about paper trails, though. They're only useful to people who don't mind what they find. And what I'd found 3 weeks earlier was that our department head, a woman I'll call Renata, had been approving expense reports for a consulting relationship that didn't exist. Not fraud in the dramatic, movie villain sense. Just the boring, everyday kind where somebody's cousin gets a check every month for advisory services that amount to absolutely nothing. I did what any compliance analyst is contractually, ethically, and legally obligated to do. I filed it. Quietly. Through the proper internal channel. No drama, no gossip, no forwarding it to the group chat. Renata, it turns out, had a friend in HR. A woman named, let's call her Carol, who ran the front desk like her own personal kingdom. And clearly felt that loyalty to a work friend outranked, say, federal compliance law. 3 days after I filed my report, I got called to Carol's desk. Not a private office. The front desk. In the open floor plan. Where everyone could hear. I heard you filed something about Renata, Carol said, loud enough for the whole row of cubicles to catch it, arms crossed like she was about to deliver a verdict she'd already made up in the shower that morning. I filed a compliance report, I said. That's my job. Carol leaned back in her chair. Smiled the way people smile right before they say something they think is very clever. You might want to know your place around here. Somebody 2 desks over actually laughed. Not a big laugh. Just enough of one to let me know this was apparently the department's idea of Tuesday entertainment. I didn't argue. I didn't raise my voice. I just said, understood, picked my badge back up off the desk, and walked back to my office. Here's what Carol didn't know, and what Renata definitely didn't know either. Compliance reports involving federal contracts don't stay in the building. By policy, not my policy, the actual federal policy governing the contract, anything flagged as a potential compliance violation on that specific account gets auto-routed to 2 places simultaneously. Internal HR. And the company's general counsel, who reports in writing, same day, to the CEO. I hadn't leaked anything. I hadn't gone around anyone. I'd just filled out a form correctly, the way I'd filled out that exact same form correctly for 2 straight years. 36 minutes after Carol told me to know my place, my desk phone rang. It was the CEO's executive assistant, using the specific tone people use when they've been told to say very little and mean it. He's coming down. He'd like to speak with you directly. I want to be clear that I did not, in that moment, feel triumphant. I mostly felt like I needed to check if there was spinach in my teeth. You know that thing that happens in movies where someone important walks through an office and everyone suddenly gets very busy? That's not a Hollywood invention. That is a documented, real workplace phenomenon, and I watched it happen in real time. The CEO, a guy who, in 2 years, I'd maybe seen in person 4 times, always from a distance, always surrounded by people holding folders, walked the entire length of the floor, past Renata's office, past the front desk, past Carol, who had gone very, very pale, and stopped directly at my desk. Got a minute, he said. Like it was a question. It was not a question. We stepped into a conference room. He had a printed copy of my compliance filing already sitting on the table, which meant general counsel had moved fast, and my stomach did a small, nervous flip before I remembered I was the one who'd done nothing wrong here. "Walk me through this," he said. So I did. Calmly. With dates, dollar amounts, and the exact policy language that made the consulting relationship a problem. He listened without interrupting once, which, for a CEO, is apparently rarer than you'd think. Renata was placed on administrative leave within the hour, pending a formal investigation that, 3 weeks later, ended her employment entirely. Carol lasted a little longer, but know your place doesn't age well once it's the subject of an HR-on-HR investigation, and by the end of that month, her desk had a different name played on it. Me? I got a very awkward, very sincere apology from the CEO himself, a formal commendation in my file, and I won't lie to you, a raise that made the whole miserable Tuesday feel almost worth it. Almost. But here's the part that actually stuck with me. Nobody at that front desk laughed at me again after that day. Not because they were scared of me. Because they finally understood something Carol should have figured out before she opened her mouth in front of an audience. Doing your job correctly is not a threat to anyone except the people who aren't doing theirs. I didn't need to raise my voice. I didn't need to threaten anybody or leak a single document to a reporter. I just filled out a form the right way, on time, like I had for 2 years straight, and let the system built specifically to catch people like Renata do exactly what it was designed to do. Sometimes the loudest revenge is just showing up, doing things by the book, and letting everyone else's shortcuts catch up with them in real time. If this one hit different, make sure you're subscribed to Hidden Truth Chronicles. We've got a whole library of workplace karma stories just like this one. Drop a comment. Would you have called it in or let it slide? See you in the next story.